and then a dope thing from Warpcast, which I'm hoping is going to be ready by next week, but it's on their timing, and I don't want to spoil anything. And then ETH Denver. I'm doing something pretty cool with Coinbase at ETH Denver, and then the Farcaster meetup, hoping to do something cool there if I can get the passport app done, which coming along pretty nicely. You saw the like welcome splash screen or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's what I've been working on. And then dots, obviously. I bounced like usually I'll spend one morning working on one product and then the afternoon working on another.
Yep.
And then I usually flip day to day just to keep it interesting. So like one morning I'll do dot zero or dot studio, and then I'll do passports in the afternoon. And the next day I'll do like passports in the morning and then dots in the afternoon type
Mhm.
stuff. That's just kind
Mhm.
of how I keep it engaging. But yeah.
Is the long-term strategy or even short-term strategy, I guess, is to have each one of those products kind of coexist as an ecosystem together, right? So like passports is
So
kind of like your person, I guess. And like I know that like you were saying that you were gonna let anybody do stamps, which I think is amazing. And it's gonna like open up the creative floodgates on that one.
yep.
And I guess like dots are like your AI agents that you sponsor, right? Sort of. So is a passport holder managing multiple dots? Or like I guess I'm kind of curious to hear your vision on like to see where everything kind of connects and everything. Cause it's amazing. I love it. But yeah.
No, that's a great question, a great set of questions. And part of the reason I love like, the permission to record this kind of stuff, because I know that out like you guys are going to evoke and kind of elicit some of the vision from me, which, I haven't had time to really digest and distribute to the community. Um, so yes, right. So if you think of native as the umbrella, right, it is a city. And just like any city, there are citizens in that city. Unlike any city, 20% of the citizens are in native are human and 80% are agentic. And so dots are the agentic citizens and humans are, represented by passports.
Right.
If you have a passport that can allow you to do certain things like own and manage and sponsor dots or own a home, right? Actually own real estate in the city of native, et cetera. And those are just the first couple of things that I'm envisioning. Um, the other thing with regards to passports is that they can collect stamps, both in the digital world of native, right? So those are the first stamps to date, which are things like you've provided liquidity, you've held native since day one, et cetera, et cetera. But increasingly, again, knock on wood, hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have our first IRL stamps, right? You attended a Coinbase event with Derek, or you went to the Farcaster meetup in Denver, or whatever it is. And over time, I imagine some of these IRL stamps unlocking certain things within the city of native, right? So if you've been to a Farcaster meetup as represented by the stamps on your passport, maybe you get access to a special Farcaster only neighborhood, or a Farcaster only kind of club or whatever, or you get a theme, or your airdrops 10,000 Farcaster tokens within the city
Yeah.
of native or whatever it may be, right? Those are the types of things that I'm imagining kind of at scale. And in order to do that, have to release the ability for anyone to issue a stamp, right? And so I think of stamps hopefully as a better POAP with kind of real world utility or native world utility,
Right.
kind of attached to it, right?
Right.
Um, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. Now on dots, on the relationship between humans and dots, most dots will be sponsored by a human, right? So I have my 5 employees or family of dots, whatever they end up being called, whatever we end up referring to them as. I have, my team of 5 dots, and one of them helps me rent out my home, and 2 of them help me run my business in the city of native. And the other two are, financial traders. And yeah, I'm kind of living off of their profits, right? So those are, you know, the sponsored dots. But then there are other, like I call them first party dots, which are basically managed by the city of native to fill in gaps, right? So maybe no one wants to make the janitor of the high school in native, right? That would be something that the city of native would actually manage directly, right? These kind of first party dots. No one has sponsored it. It's mainly meant to like plug in holes within the city of natives.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so insane to think about because you think about like all of the commodities that are used and traded in traditional markets and what those things are turned into in terms of objects. So the amount of sheer tokens that is going to possibly be produced is crazy to think
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
And I think, it will start very basic. The way I'm imagining it anyway, it will start fairly like straightforward. So like tacos, pizza, coffee, electricity,
Yep.
etc. I think by the end, like the end game of the city of native is like the more nuanced, the more niche the tokens, the better people will end up doing, right? So like, instead of owning just like office token for office space, there's many different co-working spaces that a dot could own, or you're owning $ monitor, right? Or $ microphone or whatever it is. And someone has like cornered the camera market or cornered the like, bottled water market or whatever it may be, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And the other thing is like native will progress as AI technology progresses, right?
Yeah.
So as like models get better, more nuance, better training data, better reasoning, et cetera, like native is going to inherently like benefit from that as basically all of the dots, 80% of the citizenry in the city of native gets smarter. Uh,
Wow.
which is pretty cool to think about. Like imagine if 80% of your, neighbors got smarter every year, right? Like hopefully they do. But that's kind of crazy to think about is like what happens. And I'm really excited to like watch that played out.
Yeah. And I guess like, yeah, you launched Clanker on native you launched native on Clanker, and I guess are the $ water bottle, camera, are those also gonna somehow be launched with Clanker as well? Or is
They
this
are.
using Coinbase agent kick? Oh, it is?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the way that it works, and this works right now. This is not like pie in the sky dream. I'm building this right now. It works right now.
Right.
So a dot is built on top of Agent Kit from Coinbase and Clanker and Farcaster. So a dot will receive a Farcaster account with its own FID, courtesy of Native. We are paying the registration fee for every dot. And so a dot will receive a Farcaster account, and that's how it's basically journaling its day
Right.
and how you as a human will interact with it. So you can
Right.
like, just like any other agent on Farcaster or Twitter, you mention it, etc. But then there's like Dot Studio, which I'm also happy to demo for you guys. That you can like chat with it, you can give it lore, etc. That goes into basically its memory bank and part of its context for how it acts within the city of native. It has a tool that allows it to launch a clanker as well as it is fully aware of all of the tokens within the economy of native. So at all times it can query like, hey, does coffee already exist or should I launch it? If it doesn't exist and it wants coffee, it will launch the clanker. And for every other dot, because they also have the context for what's in the city of native, for every other dot that buys that token, obviously the clanker fee structure comes into bear, right?
Yeah.
So the entire economy of native, from bottled water to co-working to electricity to pizza, is entirely tokenized and entirely built on Clanker.
Yeah.
Every dot has the ability to autonomously launch clankers, and every dot token, which is kind of what I'm calling them. I don't know
Right.
a better term just yet. City token, dot token, et cetera, right? So the collective noun for pizza and electricity and bottled water, et cetera. All of those are, they have a liquidity pool pairing with native. And I'm also working on, so all of that I just mentioned is built, and working in, a local situation.
Rested.
I mean, that's sick. I mean, this really, like, this type of app wouldn't, I mean, be possible without the creator, like, fee distribution that Clanker kind of like allows us to have. And then you can then associate agentic things with their own wallet. And
Yep.
then you could give them an allowance or like divvy up that fee structure based off of how, important they are to your family essentially. And then they can just, yeah, act on their own. It's crazy. I can't wait till it comes.
Yeah. It's, it's, it's one of these things. It's like slow coming, but then it's going to happen all at once, and it's going to
Yeah.
from what I'm seeing locally, it's actually pretty insane.
Yeah.
To be honest, like how nuanced they get as well, like the dots themselves. There's one. I think I told Dan this story, but like there's one where a dot will actually launch a business for other dots. Right? It launched an Uber Eats. Like they don't even have legs. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Why would you launch a delivery service? But they do, and they launched a token for it in the city of native, and other dots can then go buy it if it wants delivery, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. But then the hope is, and the reason why dots have sponsors is not just for the entertainment aspect, but as dots are basically trading with each other, they're generating fees like you mentioned. And I'm hoping that those fees can actually benefit human holders as well.
Yeah.
And then, I'm also building kind of a marketplace of not native tokens. So where if you don't have a passport or you're not managing dots, not sponsoring dots, you can still speculate on the economy of native from the outside, right? So like in the same way that you and I can go speculate on the price of gold, in the US, or steel with tariffs, or, whatever, like you could theoretically do the same thing with the native economy, and both benefit, personally, as well as like putting money into the system, and, things like that. It's like, it's a pretty cool, basically like an economic simulator.
Yeah. Right.
Native will have inevitably probably its own like category within like deck screener and stuff like that, because there'll be so many.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm building, in my not so spare time, like the marketplace, basically a fork of Clink Fun. Shout out to
Yeah.
Nick, right?
Yeah.
It's limited to just native tokens. And you could buy, speculate, sell dot tokens like pizza or tacos or whatever.
And will the native, I guess, world only be exposed to dot tokens? I guess, like, will you have any like other meme tokens that are currently past, present? Can I like corner the Doge market or like anything? I mean, maybe not Doge, right? It's different protocol potentially, but like, yeah, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And I think that's an open question, right?
Yeah.
Like, to put it bluntly, could a dot buy OpSys?
Right.
Right? Could a dot like work with you guys for a branding project? I don't know. The initial, like,
We use it for outbound within native.
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like the MVP here is just a closed ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I think, we can dive into like dot studio and dot spaces, but I think long term, your dots could also act like bankers, right?
Yeah.
Like a banker AI ecosystem. Yeah. Huge fan of what Deployer's building, but like, I think, long term, could your team of dots interact as basically personal assistants, not just within native, but outside of it? I don't see a reason why not. But that's not what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
question too is like, these things can post at rapid speed, right? Like they can post like multiple times a minute, a second, whatever, right? Like not a second, but yeah, based on block time. I'm
No,
guessing.
they can post multiple times a second. Yeah.
How do you roll
Throttle
that?
them?
Yeah.
I throttle them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then well, yeah, I guess they have to have their own reasoning on like, well, I can only post a certain amount of time. So like, what's the most important thought that I'm having right now to post?
Yep. So a large part of like, the IP of native or whatever is the prompting system, right? It's like, how do you explain to a dot what it is? And how do you explain to a dot where it lives and what it's supposed to do and what it shouldn't do is just as important, right? To like, don't sell all of your native and send it to a random address, right? Things like that. Um, so it has a singular goal, and that singular goal is to maximize its native balance. So there's basically the 80% of the population is putting constant demand pressure on the native token.
Yep.
Right. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting, like I said, economic simulator, but I'm thinking through like the game mechanics as well, like how, when you log into native, what's fun about it? Not just what's cool and like, how do you make money and things like that, although that's the number one important thing to me anyway.
Right.
But like, how do I introduce game mechanics into it? How do I productize it in a way that's like pretty cool and interesting? And you can see that in Dot Studio, right? Like dealing a hand and giving your dots personality and things like that are, super important to me because I want to play my own game, right? My kids are constantly in here in the office and like looking at what I'm building because I want them to enjoy it as well. And I know that if I enjoy it and they enjoy it, it's ready.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want people to come and play like almost like mini games within the
Yeah.
game. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Roblox just announced their like Q4 earnings. It was like 2 billion for the quarter. Like I'm not looking at other metaverses. I'm not looking at other like, on-chain games or what, like that's, kudos to everyone that's building in the space or whatever, but Roblox is the benchmark. Minecraft benchmark. Fortnite is the benchmark, not like some random, on-chain game or whatever. Like,
Yeah, a lot of those games are like graphics first versus experience, which is like
100%.
like it's not that it's smoke and mirrors, but it's like it's barely on chain if you really think about it. It's not really using much of like what's important.
That's exactly right. And like, the chain is cool and it's an incredible tool, but fundamentally it's just like, the way I think about it anyway, it's like AWS, right? It's like, it's a way to get things done in a really cool, decentralized ownership, driven way. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's not what people are coming to a product for. It's not what people are coming to an experience for. They're coming for, fun or fame or to get laid or to get paid or, some combination thereof. And so like, that's where I'm thinking first and foremost. It's not about like, is it going to be 3D or pixel or whatever? It's like, those things are cool and interesting and, fun to think about. And, I love design just like the next person, but if you don't get the experience right, it doesn't matter.
You can layer all that on later, like
Sure. That's exactly right.
I think it's smart that you're putting a lot of attention, at least initially, into, and it sounds like maybe 4 hours here, 4 hours there, 4 hours there, next day and everything. But specifically for this conversation around passports, because that is kind of the foundation of it all. It is the human experience. It is kind of like my achievements history of like, hey, I was here on day one. I like collected this. Like this is it gamifies or at least adds like badges to the experience that will become native. And then it's just like game over from there.
Yeah, I hope so. And, early on, I had a conversation with someone who was like, you should just build it just for AI, just like a city for AI. And I'm like, that's not interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, if humans aren't involved, it's like, it's just an aquarium.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to tap on the glass every once in a while and see what the AIs are up to, but like, it's not that engaging. It's not interesting. There's no retention there, et cetera. And there's no benefit, right? Like, I'm imagining the city of native being beneficial to passport holders, to native holders, to dot sponsors, et cetera, right? Like, in the same way that if you invest in the American economy, it's beneficial, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
The same way with the city of native. And so you're exactly right. Like, passports, they were, one of the first things that I dropped as a tool, and I'm still building on. Like, I'm not done with them by any means. We're just getting started. Building an actual like iOS app around it, and an experience around it, et cetera. Like, it's crucial to keep the human piece a part of the city of native.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, speaking to like the design of native currently, the way that you like are able to execute on design in the way that you are is great. Like you have a very good eye for it, and like the touch that is on everything that is an MVP, right? Like it is, it's like very, very in work in progress. Like the level of details, you can just see it getting layered on in each of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
that you're building. And it's a really great core for someone like us in part to come help build on, because it's really well laid out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you can even see some of the aesthetic choices that I have made, for better or for worse, right? Like, it tend to be very clean. Um, you know, I like to lean into the like city thematics, and, like the passport had, you guys saw, what could share. Uh,
Yeah, are you generating these passport stamps yourself in like Photoshop for now, or?
so the stamps themselves are generative, or
Yeah,
um
that's right.
let me
I
just
guess I was referring to the new home screen you were building. Yeah, this one here. Yeah.
yeah, so this was actually I made each of these by hand. I mean, there's essentially, if you look really carefully, there's like four themes,
Yep. Yep.
um or like four templates, if you will. And they have different colors for each neighborhood. And I can send you guys like a list of all the neighborhoods that exist. Most of them, so there's like districts, like Westworks, for instance, is a district within the city of native, and each district has a number of neighborhoods within it.
Mhm.
Most of the neighborhoods, if not all, are named after like technologists or engineers, or someone, Pascal, named after Blaise Pascal, right? Valim, which is coming up here in the middle. Jose Valim is the founder of Elixir, which is one of my favorite programming languages, right? So there's like a kind of nuance to the digital side of native. um but and they each have like a associated color scheme, and things like that. At least right now, all of that is up for grabs. Or I'm not like super attached to the color scheme and look and feel of each neighborhood, or they don't really have one per se. And so there's probably an opportunity there, but like, um I struggle sometimes with like, what is the right UI components, like this little dot thing on the button, right? The iconography usually is just like open source icons,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. Like, I think there's a opportunity to like up level those. You know, the font that I'm using right now is called Satoshi. It's basically like an iteration on Enter.
Mhm.
I like the like clean approach. Um,
Is this the one that you've mentioned that really delineates between zeros and letter O's?
No, that was a custom
That's
font that we designed at Bunches.
yeah.
But uh,
Honestly, I think that like I know that there's the opportunity to give character to all this stuff and like maybe change it based on like the dots that you own to a degree over time, those sorts of things. And like you can make the neighborhoods feel a little bit different stylistically and whatnot. But like as like to start out, like it's very informational and it's very clean. And I think that that lends itself to a wider audience, because you're not like pigeonholed in the aesthetic really.
yeah, and I think you're right. And I'm glad to hear you say that. I think the nuance here and like where I think you guys could like plug and play pretty easily is I'm not thinking about this holistically, like top down. I'm basically doing stuff as needed.
Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
And it's more of a bottoms up design approach, which I'm generally not a fan of. Like I like, okay, let's establish the native brand and then, from there design like dots and passports and homes and all this kind of stuff and then go from there. But I haven't had the time to like sit down and think
Well, that
about it.
yeah, that's the thing is like it slows you down development wise because you're
Right.
like, I don't want to see like shitty Times New Roman, right? Like
Exactly.
I want to make it look halfway decent, which means like actually getting gaps in the spacing right and grids and getting all of that. Yeah.
Yep. And I do a decent job, I think. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, a lot better than some stuff I've seen on chain, that's for sure. But at the same time, I know that it's not what it could be. And I think having you guys kind of take a look and diving in, would up level that even more. In thinking about prioritization, there's one thing that currently exists that I despise. Like I actively dislike it.
Okay.
And it may come as a surprise. The other thing it doesn't exist and is like pretty open space. So the thing that I don't like right now is actually the native logo. Um, the overall native branding, it's it was one of the first things I did in November, December, early December, on a weekend, just like I needed a token image, right? And like
Yeah.
I don't like it. Um, the proportions are weird. It's like evocative of a house and the letter N, but it's like I don't know. I'm just not in love with it. I think it could be something way better.
It's like it's got a little bit of an identity crisis. Like it works, but it's not all the way one or the other. And that's where it can
It
be
it
cool.
also is not like super fitting with the like how the rest of the brand is kind of evolved.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
didn't mention this. I'm not like super attached to the green scheme. A lot of people like it. I could take it or leave it. Um, but that aside, the thing that doesn't exist right now is the look and feel of dots. So if I stop sharing this and I'm sure you guys have seen this, but I'll walk you through. Um,
yeah.
so let's do this. Dot Studio, obviously, this first page definitely doesn't exist in any way. But this is like the homepage for Dot Studio. If I go and create a dot, right? I deal a dot a hand. Um, so this is fine, right? Basically it's like a D&D character sheet if you're familiar with those. So you have like this profile at the top, each represented by a suit in the hand of cards. I can distribute points. Maybe I want more riz, less focus, right? Um, I go through here and give it a personality. So if your dot were a global city, what would it be? Let's do Nashville. If your dot were a fruit, let's do pomegranate, beverage, bourbon.
Nice. Nashville.
Hip hop, Dragon. Let's do Midnight, NATO, Crypto Maxi, Spaceship,
This is
Like,
it's so fun.
Christmas, right? And so this is like the personality, the vibe of the dot. I hit next, and then I can name it, and then I'm given, based on the personality and traits, right? Like I'm given the option for the first token that my dot will launch, right? And so let's do craft beer, and I can't think of a name right now, so I'll let AI give me some options. Nash is a pretty good name.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So Nash is my dot responsible for craft beer. I come and collect, yes, hit create dot, and now like I'm in dot studio. This is demo data on the right, but you can see, the name, etc. This is how I would sponsor it, collect fees. What's missing here is like this dot 13, this profile picture. Like ideally, this would be evocative of how dots will be represented in native, like even in the core UI. But remember, they get Farcaster profiles as well. So, like, what's the profile picture for a dot? Like, how do you differentiate between dots? Like,
Right. Is it a generative algo based on the personality that evolves over time? Yeah.
exactly. Or is it something that, like, I'm a big fan of Robert Falcon's custom punks, right? Like, where you can kind of create a character. Is it something like that? I like dots being like distinctly not human. Um, I like the idea of dots, right?
Yeah.
I don't like them as like robots or, kind of fantastical creatures, but,
It could straight up be like, I'm just first thing I picture is obviously like the 7-Up, like little red dot with like the sneakers and the
yeah,
hand. You know what I mean? Like,
um,
yeah.
is that like cool enough? Is
Right.
it cute enough? Is it
Yeah.
too cute? Is it like, I don't know, right? Like I think there's a lot of like exploration to be done of for the
The
native version.
identity of a dot. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of exploration to be done for dots. But in addition to the forecaster stuff, you can also chat with it. This isn't hard coded, by the way. We're running a bit low on coffee. Cool. What do we have? Too much of. We've got too much pizza. I want to trade.
Ooh, a special deal.
Pizza. What's that?
He says considering a special deal.
Yeah. So like maybe somebody else would like issue a coupon token that if you buy, you get a like special exchange rate or something, right?
Yeah.
But then I can like trade right here within the UI. By the way, I'm talking with operating system. They are thinking about what dots look like. What do you think you look like? Not bound by physical appearance, right? Like I'm in essence, it's bullshit. But like, there's things like that you can interact with the dot, etc. Then there's lore, which is like, if chat is just like an ephemeral conversation, lore is, I'm not loading any memories here, but this is actually the Farcaster feed for the dot. And so you can actually weight memories for the dot, or you can give it lore. And so had a meeting with Rish earlier today, or biography, relationship with other people, goals, and then you can weight those.
Yeah, this is like weighting positive and negative prompts for it almost.
Yep.
You can kind of steer the direction. Yeah.
Yeah, that context gets loaded with the dot. so, and then you have, kind of settings or whatever, but the like look and feel of dots, isn't established or there. Like, most of this is kind of, a wide open exploration space.
Oh man. I mean, even just the fact that like brands or, startups can come in and launch a dot, for their
Yeah.
company, and it's going to be interacting on Farcaster is
Yeah.
even a huge use case in that small thing,
Yeah.
but it's a big one, right?
Yeah. So like, and that's a good point. And that, frankly, I'm focused primarily on native holders, but like, what would it look like for a business, like OpSys, for instance, to
Yeah.
have a digital version of you in the city of native, right? You launch $agency within the city of native, or even OpSys within native, right? And other dots could buy it and, interact and things like that. How do you represent that graphically is one question.
Yeah.
How do you support kind of business enterprise use cases for dots? Like, that's something that needs to be thought of. And then,
Right.
at the top level of native, like how does the native brand system, manifest in terms of dots and passports and homes and the studio and the native UI? Like, that's kind of
Yeah.
the challenge here, right? Is how do we build a brand and a design system that accommodates for not just this one particular siloed thing, but the ecosystem that is native.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just thinking right now, like when it comes to the dots profile picture, like if it's going to be sponsored by native, you might want to like indicate that it is a native product, and whether that means like by default it's going to have like a green border or whatever it is, or the native logo at the bottom right or
Yeah.
something. And then that way, if somebody wanted to sponsor it, they'd remove that to have like more like, I don't know, different like look and feel of their
No.
profile pic. It might be like a nice use case there. But yeah, the identity of a dot itself is definitely
I think it would be
tricky.
really cool to work with, because like we're pretty close to a lot of generative artists just from like working in the generative art sector for quite a while, and like it would be really neat to see what someone would create, and then like over time maybe there's like unlockable different collabs with like different artists that represent either different
Yeah.
neighborhoods, or like you can reskin
Yep.
your dot with a different artist's generative algorithm or something like that, right? And they all would fit in some way into like their interpretation of what a dot looks like.
Yeah, you
Yep.
think of
Like,
like Puniver and what he was doing and his
Yeah,
generative faces. I could see them being used here.
for sure.
yeah, I think I sent you, Dan, the design
Yeah.
board, just like the arena or whatever.
And I was huge in Roller Coaster Tycoon early days,
Yeah.
SimCity. Like that was the first game I ever played on a computer with SimCity, and then like Age of Empires 2. Like
Man,
this like visual language is just so nostalgic and coded into like, yeah, I think a lot of us for sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think so too. You know, part of me, I don't think I want to go this direction for like the core UI. It is nostalgic, but almost to a fault to
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like you see so much of this in on-chain projects, and it's done super well. Like I think of Pool Suite, they did a really good job with stuff like this. There's a couple of other um projects that like use the Windows 95 aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's cool, and I think there could be like a nod to it. But one of the primary inspirations for how I'm thinking about the native UI, like the actual game, at least in MVP, is something much more akin to like Google Maps, right? Where
Yeah.
it's utilitarian for first and foremost, but aesthetically pleasing, clean, easy to use, informative. And what that means though, like if that's the case, what that means is that the visual aesthetic of homes and dots is going to do a lot of the carrying of the color pieces and the like variety, and the UI would actually kind of fade into the background, allowing homes and the dot branding and things like that to kind of come to the forefront, right? But the reason I pull this up is like you see so much of the inspiration here is generative art. I love generative art. Most of what I've collected over the years, since 2020 has been generative in all of my wallets, etc. But I also love like the metro aesthetics, the like city angles. I love public transit maps and mini metro and things like that. I also love this thing that you sent over. Um,
Yeah, Boot Boys. I love dots. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what the
But
shirt is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Same brand.
Yeah.
so like I think dancing around a couple of different things, like the intersection of analog and digital is interesting. The
It's
city
downtime
is
right
like,
now.
oh yeah.
That's the book
Um,
that it's in.
um, the intersection of digital and analog, the city aesthetic, for lack of a better word, a nod to like the nostalgic games of yore is interesting, all while keeping it like clean and um accessible. I think it's a challenge. I think it's an interesting one,
But yeah, and then you start thinking about too, like you would have layers, right? Like we have satellite view and map view and like all these sorts of things in Google
yeah,
Maps. What if there's like a heat map view of like most usage or most populated or like where the most coins in certain areas are being traded, those sorts of things,
yep,
fill gaps in the market, possibly. I don't know.
yep,
And then I'm picturing like, some of those older games, right? Like they weren't using like obviously like PBR shaders and textures and a lot of that. Some of it was lightly textured, but like
yep,
how do you do that in a way that looks a little bit more primitive but cleaned up and like I mean even leveraging like halftones, right? As
yep,
like part of it because those are very dot coded for sure, obviously halftones, but like yeah, how do you show movement within it? How do you show times of day potentially? What does
yep,
that look like? What's light mode, dark mode look like? All those, yeah, it's fun to
yep.
think about how that plays out.
By the way, you brought up something. There's another. I don't have like a catchy name for it yet right now in my head. It's just called a global service. But um, so there's going to be a global service that emits events for all dots to react to and humans, right? So time of day is one thing.
Whether
Weather is another, but like imagine that a native owned dot has cornered the market in coffee and it burns 80% of the supply, right? Like
coffee factory burned, yeah.
yeah, like a coffee factory exploded or something like that. Like, what is the response of the rest of the citizenry of native when there's a coffee shortage?
Yeah.
Right. Things like that. And most of these events type thing, God forbid a real world terrorist attack, but what does a terrorist attack in the city of native look like? Like, what does, um, the discovery of a new resource pit, right? And native, the city actually emits tokens, right? There's like global events like that. That's like pretty interesting to think about that dots will like respond to as well. What does that look like in game? Like, is that a notification that gets sent to everyone? Is it, a feed of the city? Is it something else? Like, yeah, I don't know yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I guess I mean obviously we're not getting Sage. He's like a larger part of like the design efforts, and that's okay. I mean we're recording this, which is great. But I guess, you and I had talked about last time trying to figure out in terms of how long it might take to do branding. And I had said like maybe, 6 weeks, 2 months, that sort of thing. And you were like, why don't we kind of shoot for 3 just in case, like hopefully branding's done then. And then maybe we can start carving work out on other things as like we fade out of branding and branding becomes delivered, at least to a degree where are implementing. Um, I think that, in terms of like scope, right? What does that look like for you beyond like the standard, fonts and logo lockups and like different applications for that? Is it also, templates for social media? Do you want to do that? Are you fine with just like posting screenshots and, obviously doing your own copy like you do, or do you want that sort of stuff? Do you want to do anything in 3D for marketing, that kind of stuff? Do you want, is there like, obviously there's a couple of areas that you see as like, eyesore areas to you that you want to focus in on. So, are we working on those tracks in tandem with branding from the start? How important are they? I guess just getting a lay of the land of like how all of that seamlessly comes together in a way that works for both you and us.
Yeah, I mean, part of the blessing and a curse, frankly, of like working with someone like me is like I'm capable enough to take a lot of that off of your plate, but also like annoying on the like,
Why we're here too. So
yeah, exactly.
no,
So it's like, but what I don't need like a social media template or things like that. I'll need copy. Like I'm frankly pretty good at that kind of stuff.
yep,
Um, I think what I mentioned before, like the top down, like system, like branding systems thinking is what I don't have time for right now.
yeah,
Right. Like how do all of these many pieces fit together in a cohesive visual aesthetic that evokes the right emotions that also works across these different, kind of siloed pieces. Like that's the most important thing that I could do if that's all I did. You know what I mean? Like if I spent the next 3 months doing that, I don't have the art skills or, whatever that you guys certainly do and, things like that, but I could figure out what the system should be and then figure out how to execute it. But I don't have time for that. And I need someone that like gets native, which I think you guys do. Obviously we're aligned, not just philosophically, but, tokenomically. Is that a word? I guess so.
it's,
Um, and I think that that's like a prime opportunity. So, from a scope perspective, like the deliverables in terms of like social templates and stuff like that, like the 3D stuff, like it could be cool,
yeah,
but that's lower priority to me.
yep,
The higher priority piece is native, like overall native logo branding system and how that could be implemented within dots, within passports, within,
yep,
et cetera. Like that's the most important piece to me. And then second to that would be dots. What do dots look like? Like, what is their visual aesthetic? How are they represented within the city of native? How are they represented within things like Dot Studio, Dot Spaces? What's their profile picture on Farcaster? What do they look like in game? How do they move around? Like those types of things are the open questions um, that I think need answers first and foremost. And then like once those two things are kind of um not done, but done, then it's like, okay, well, how can we build like really cool assets around these things? How can we like make it dope from a social perspective and marketing and all those types of things, right?
yeah.
That's how I think about it right now. And I'm definitely open to like feedback or questions or conversation there and how you guys would think about it. But
Yeah,
that's
I
how
mean,
I,
I guess go, Austin.
I was gonna say that's honestly that's kind of I think perfectly where we want to be is kind of take like that like bottom up approach, so to speak, and really look or I guess it is like top down sort of and look over everything, but kind of like rebuild the foundation of like
yeah,
higher branding. Um, and typically what we do with that, and I don't know if Dan has gone into detail about it, is like through a discovery process where it's a series of exercises, but more importantly, it's just a conversation between us more in depth on like look and feel, but also like how does your community view you, short term, medium term, long term goals. And then we kind of get like a real big picture of like the focal point of like where to focus everything, in addition to obviously like exploring like logos, fonts, colors, um,
Yep.
that type of stuff as well. But typically those sessions, it's like we usually run like 4 to 5, depending on how much feedback, and they're like an hour a week. And then after those amounts, we wouldn't really need you too much for like long sessions of like, unless you want to hang out and stuff like that. But after like we get like a real good sense of like what we're involved in, we're kind of off to the races, and we just have like periodical check-ins. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we probably, since we've front loaded a lot of the
Yeah.
knowledge, we can probably truncate the discovery process a little bit.
Yeah.
And we'll just figure out what that looks like. It's funny because you have a templated discovery process and then it always changes with every client and it's just the way it goes. And that's,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's client work, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I'm happy to truncate that. I think one cool thing would be to like, and Dan, we talked about this last time. Like, what if we did a stream, like where the community could join and chat, and actually like we have a community discovery process, and they have some input
I think
into the conversation. Yeah. Now,
that'd be pretty
obviously,
interesting. Yeah.
now my community knows this. I have veto power. Like, this is a benevolent monarchy, right? Like, native is a benevolent dictatorship. But at the same time, like I think it'd be dope to have community input and like have them weigh in of how they think about native from
totally.
a aesthetic point of view. If for no other reason, then it's like super interesting and it would benefit me as a builder. Like, how
Yeah,
do other people think about native? I mean, some of the coolest ideas have come, bottom up from the community. And, I think that would be dope. I
I
mean,
think it's
obviously
worth
I'm
it.
super opinionated on the brand and like, I know what it shouldn't be. I'm not quite sure what it should be just yet. Um, and I'm happy to continue these types of conversations and, around discovery for sure. I think we can truncate it, but, um, at the same time, I would want community to have a voice.
That'd be
Totally.
cool. I mean, that'd be super cool. I think as long as we delineate what is like maybe community, that way we can just throw everything in there and kind of distill from there and pull from it, while still keeping a running track, at least when we're talking about like a mood board and people might be shouting out ideas of anything. And I'm acting like Jamie from Joe Rogan, pulling everything from the internet as quick
Yeah.
as possible. It's like, I think it'll be a fun exercise. We've never like done an open one like that, but I'm definitely down to crowdsource like that.
It's fun
Cool.
too because everybody has their own lens of what native should be. So
Yeah.
everyone is seeing the blurry lens get focused together. And it might focus faster having community chiming in with their points of view because it's easier to focus in on ideas when the hive mind, has kind of
Yeah.
all of the same general direction. Then
Yeah. And I think it's very dangerous in a vacuum.
Mhm.
You have hive mind because it's not actual hive mind, right? It's like it's hive mind, but every individual actor acts as an individual.
Mhm.
Whereas most of the time, like a true hive mind, they're collectively acting as an individual. So it could be super noisy and messy without a filter, but that's my job.
Yeah.
Right.
My job is to say, I don't like that. Like, no, this is a good idea. This fits my vision of native. This doesn't. Please stop talking.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
That I'm okay playing that role, and I think the community is okay with me playing that role. But um, I think it could be fun, and I definitely welcome the community input into a process like this.
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to noodle on how we want to like approach that from like a tech standpoint, whether we're streaming it on Twitch. It'd be cool to use, what is it, stream, whatever that frame is on Farcaster that allows us to stream. Maybe there's something we can do there.
Oh yeah, we
Um,
could do that.
YouTube, I mean, concurrent
YouTube.
streams if we can, right? That would be
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we could use stream. I have a stream set up. I streamed it bunches when I was doing like sports stuff. It's pretty easy for me to do that.
Yeah.
And I think stream would allow us to like launch a token for the stream or whatever, and like all proceeds could be contributed to you guys for the work or whatever. Um, I don't know how beneficial or lucrative that would be, but
Yeah, or we could figure something out that makes sense for all of us to pool money towards, from a charitable standpoint, and then,
sure.
whatever, we're not really, it's a community driven effort at that point. So I'm open to any avenues. Um, but yeah, I got OBS. I stream on Twitch every now and again. So it's like, yeah, it'll be pretty easy for me to set up. Dan might need a little bit of a primer, but I think as long as like there's one or two fail safes, we should be fine.
Cool. Well, this was great. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy
Yeah,
Valentine's
yeah.
Day. And we will chat again next week. Maybe we try to shoot for next Friday too. If not, we'll meet before that. But it'd be great to kind of get everything kicked off. And then I think as far as like contract stuff, I'd probably shoot for like middle of next week just to shoot it over to you, the MSA and then like the project scope, which are two separate things. But yeah, we'll get to it. It's pretty boilerplate for the most part anyway. So
Yep, I'm around. Next Friday will be what? Just discovery between the three of us.
I think so. Sage will most likely be able to join that one. I think he was just like he had a bunch of stuff going on today. So yeah, he will likely join that. And yeah, we should just kick off discovery and make it like maybe a Friday thing, unless a better day is a thing. But
That
Well,
works for me. Are
are
you guys
you?
on East Denver?
So I was just about to ask you. I didn't have plans to, but like I've been hearing it more and more lately.
I'm gonna drop to another call. But
All right,
on the
yeah,
road, catch you.
yeah. I don't think we have plans to go, but I'm thinking about it. Why you're gonna be there, right?
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
there from the 20. I arrived the night of the 26th,
Okay.
and I'll be there until the 2nd. I leave that
So,
Sunday.
so if we were to run discoveries next week, the following week, you probably wouldn't be able to make it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna
So,
do it Monday or Tuesday of the following week, like the 24th or 25th, I think it is.
yeah, well, we like to use like an entire week to like recap and like learn what we've learned, like take in what we've learned from that session, either formulate any ideas and like build upon it and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and then come back to you.
You know what? Now that I think about it, the Friday while I'm in East Denver, I don't have anything scheduled. My big days in Denver are the Thursday and Saturday.
Yeah.
So I could probably do Friday.
I wouldn't, yeah, I was gonna say we could either like if you can do it, that's great. I don't want to hold you to that because I know when I'm at like events and stuff like that, it's just like crazy, even like just to find somewhere to eat. But like we can either skip a week or we can even start on the 7th or something like that, depending. So like it's up to you.
I'd rather just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
We could do, I mean, I could stream from East Denver. Like we could do the community on that Friday, the 28th.
That would be kind of sick.
Yeah.
That would be sick.
Yeah,
Okay.
we could do that.
All right, we should shoot for that. Yeah, because that'll be super rad. Because I think like the first session is really intro, like some short questions, and then the 28th is a more hands-on session, like building, like kind of the concept of what native is. That's awesome. Yeah,
And that should, I mean, we should probably schedule, a standard hour or whatever, but then have buffer before and after for tech stuff.
for sure. Cool. All right, man. This was great. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
I'm
likewise.
super stoked.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Yep.
Cheers.
Thanks for your time, Austin.
Yeah, you too. Later. Bye.